is hemp. Gee, it looks just like what? Did you have a question? Yeah.
If you're allergic to hemp, would you have a bad reaction to smoking marijuana?
So if you're allergic to hemp, would you have a bad reaction to marijuana? I bet you would. Okay, call me crazy. Who is allergic to hemp? I mean, I'm so sorry. So that like scratchy underwear feeling, like you get that rough, yeah, so don't smoke pot. Because you would hate to have that in your lungs. Right? There's no God. No one should be allergic to hemp. But what does this look like? It looks like pot. Because it is. It's the exact same plant. Right? Cannabis sativa is cannabis sativa. But it's grown differently. Right? And genetic strains, over time, what are you breeding for? You're trying to breed for long, strong stalks. That is not what psychoactive cannabis is all about. Right? So Schwarzenegger, who has smoked pot on camera, said this: we don't want to legalize hemp because they would grow pot in between the rows of hemp. How fucking retarded would that be? Well, let's see. I'd have these little bitty plants surrounded by these big, long, tall, stalked plants. Are they going to get any light? No. Obviously, that's not going to help. Oh, and they're going to get cross-pollinated. So basically, both strains are going to get messed up. The hemp plants aren't going to be tall, and they're going to have these stupid buds that are totally useless on them. And the little psychoactive plants are going to, oh, it's going to be a mess. Okay? All right. This is not hemp. Okay? You're not going to make underwear out of that. Okay? You can grind it all up. In fact, I recommend it. But you're not going to turn it into fiber, right? It's just not going to happen. Right? There's no stalk, right? There's a little bitty stem there that you're not going to turn that into a tie. Right? Separating these two markets is important because I feel like the hemp movement has really suffered simply because cannabis is psychoactive. There's no reason North Dakota can't grow hemp. Right? Why not? Somebody's going to have to come out and check and make sure it's not psychoactive and all that. When you see a plant that's 11 feet tall, I think you kind of know, hey, those aren't giant buds that are going to turn into psychoactive cannabis. What can you do? All right. The oils and soaps aren't really from the stalk, but from the seeds. All right. You grind up the seeds. Okay. 22 to 25% protein. Not bad. Okay. The oil has a whole lot of intriguing fats that are hard to get in other situations. And you can make these things. Literally every normal conference has somebody selling hemp soap and shampoo and stuff like that. They make a nice little hand rub, the whole bit. All right? This you can sell. All right? If I go to, what's the Body Works or one of the ones in the mall, I feel like they have the hemp stuff. You can put it on your cuticles. But then we cross the line. The Hemp Hotel at Amsterdam has hemp-flavored beer. Because when I'm drinking a beer, I think, you know what this needs? A little hemp. But what happens? It tastes like grass. Right? It tastes like you're drinking a beer while you're mowing the lawn. You got a feel for? So industrial hemp is separate from cannabis, has THC concentrations potentially below 1%, isn't psychoactive, is grown for long stalks. and has a lot of potential to be an eco-friendly alternative for clothing and fiber. Make some sense? Okay. We mentioned Shenang in the medical marijuana world before. Is that number ringing a bell? 2737 BC, so there's this one. And when was the Marijuana Tax Act? You guys don't know when the Marijuana Tax Act was? 1937. Okay. If you have to guess, you know it's going to be after alcohol prohibition was repealed, right? And when was alcohol prohibition repealed? Very good. That was on test 4, and you guys still remember. So that'll help you if you get a multiple choice option. Okay. Burton's Anatomy of Melancholy was still in the New England dispensatory, right? The book, not that there were these hemp dispensaries around in the colonies. Right? Who's O'Shaughnessy? Alright. Well, as his name might suggest, he's Irish. But he was hired by a British company to go down to India. Right? Did all this neat electrical stuff, engineering things, right? But he noticed that folks in India were drinking what? Oh, come on, I gave you the recipe. Yeah, Bang, right? B-H-A-N-G. And the clincher was he wanted to know if this is actually psychoactive. Does this really work? He did all this work on animals, showed medicinal effects for things like arthritis. Right? And in fact, there's a newsletter now for medical marijuana stuff out in California called O'Shaughnessy's. Okay? He's like, okay, in the 1830s. And then he got another engineering job and worked on telegraphs or something. It's so funny how you read about these guys and you think, oh my God, he was the cannabis nut. And then he's like, on to something else. Okay? And then Moreau in 1845 was in France and ran a club. What's a club? Can you name anybody else who would have been in the club? Balzac. All right. Can't go wrong when you're talking about Balzac. And he actually got an award even for some of that research. But this is what hemp looks like. If you see a psychoactive cannabis plant that tall, run away with it. But seriously, look at all that stalk. Okay? And then what's on the top? They're just a bunch of leaves. Okay, this is not going to be a psychoactive product. This is not going to replace corn in our industry. Then we've got the intoxicant history stuff we talked about before, but I just want to elaborate with Shenang again. The Hindu deity Shiva. Who's the Hindu god Shiva? Yes? Alright. So when you see her, what does she usually look like?
She has like 8 arms.
She's got 8 arms and she's standing on what?
A baby's head.
A baby. Yeah. You gotta love anybody who's standing on a baby. Okay? But she's got some destruction. Okay? But she's got a whole bunch of other manifestations too. And there are certain shapes that are reminiscent of her. Okay? And you know how I am about religion, like I don't really understand it. Okay? But when you ask, apparently Shiva stood underneath some plant. The plant provided some shade and everything was cool, so away it went. As we mentioned, the Scythians used it in their funeral rituals, right? And the Taoists said it might lead to immortality. We need more data. But be careful, because if you eat too much, you'll get visions, and particularly you'll see ghosts. That must have been some good pot. All right. We drew these distinctions before, the charis and the ganja and the bong. Is that ringing a bell? Isn't that Indian restaurant over in Latham, Caravelli's? That sounds like it ought to be Italian. Maybe I misremember. But they have the Tondi drink. Right? It's basically that tea with the nice sweet milk and everything like that. It's pretty much that same recipe, only I don't think there's that other pot in it. Or it wouldn't have been so cheap. We had that. Okay. The other expression that we didn't get to, but is important in history, is cannabis was called the wine of Hagar. Right? Middle Eastern countries, what's the most prominent religion? Islam. Right? It's going to be mostly Muslim areas. Are they drinking alcohol? At least not when they're at home. If you come to the United States, you go to college, they might sneak a beer. Right? But they did have the wine of Hagar. Right? Who was Hagar? Allegedly one of the fathers of the Sufis. 1155. In there. Not too far from Hassan. Right? And who was he? The Hassans. Right? The guy who got other people to kill people for him for pot. Dude, I'll give you a dime bag if you go kill somebody. Well, this was actually the beginning of the Silk Road. What's the Silk Road? Don't say the website. What's that? What is the Silk Road? All right, it was in fact just a whole market for trade along that same area. It wasn't necessarily illegal at the time, and you didn't have to have the Tor thing on your computer.